How's it going, everyone? My name is Abhi Sastry.
And I'm Nick Palmer.
And welcome to our inaugural podcast. It's called The State of the Game, and it's brought to you by FLUIX LLC.
State of the Game, FLUIX LLC.
Yeah,
all right.
So without further ado, we kind of want to explain what's going on with the gaming culture, current events, and definitely talking about everything that's changing in this space. Not just gaming, but PC hardware as well. Everything is newly evolving, and we feel really proud to bring this out to you guys and share our opinion and our developments as well.
Right, so grab your favorite snacks or pizza if that's not a snack, and, sit back and relax and enjoy, please.
Yeah, welcome. So, without further ado, we have some recent news to get to. In the last 2 weeks in the gaming space, if you will, the biggest news so far is the reveal of the PlayStation 5.
Right.
Nick, what do you think?
It looks great. I think
like
that, there's the discless form, which I think, of course, looks a little bit more sleek, and then you have the one where you have the disc, and I think that looks good, too.
Yeah, definitely it'll stand out. With the Xbox, when they came out with the box shape, they wanted something that's subtle. This is not subtle at all. This screams gamery, as you can see, and it'll definitely stand out.
I mean, it looks a lot better than those Wi-Fi
routers.
Those Wi-Fi routers that they had for a while, all right? This is a whole other step up,
Yeah, people have been saying that it looks like a Wi-Fi router too, but this thing is packing some real powerful hardware.
It is.
It's it's got the new GDDR6 VRAM in there, and it's got about a 12 gigabyte graphics card. Apparently, they can do some ray tracing as well. What do you think about all this? It's kind of almost catching up, and also some solid state technologies. It's almost catching up to the point where you can get with a mid range PC.
I mean, honestly, this is what these things have been the entire time. I mean, right? It's like they've just been PCs that are game systems. I mean, one day they will just be PCs that are like much more slated towards playing games. I mean, I guess that's what we're looking at now, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say that it's catching up, and they've always been catching up. But this is the biggest leap that we've seen. Now they've finally gotten to the solid state space. I love the way the aesthetics looks like. They definitely know what they're going for. They haven't revealed the price, and I think that's where people are really the next big thing. And that's the best thing about it, because they're really building hype. Of course, you have two different versions here: the digital edition, the edition with the Blu-ray disc. So, what do you think is going to be the price difference? Because definitely the digital edition won't be the top of the tier one. So, what do you think is the price difference between the two?
I think it's going to be $200.
$200?
And I think we're looking at something that's going to be around like $700 when it first comes out. I mean, right, that's what I expect, right? It's going to be like slightly more than what you're used to paying for a console. Yeah. But it's just going to be like really good. It's just when I think about this,
$700, what I can build such a great PC for that.
Yeah, but this is the PC that is the PS5.
Yeah.
And they have like a few titles that you can't get on there, and they're
PS5
probably very
exclusives.
Yeah, they're probably very aware of that fact that the PCs are the libraries are growing and growing and growing. I mean, this is how they have to do it. Maybe it won't be $700 just for that fact, actually. Now that I say that, but
yeah,
I'd be interested to see it.
Yeah, so it's a good transition, just like you said, to some releases. I mean, we have The Last of Us 2 that was announced. That's coming out on a next-gen console. It's also available on PS4, but it's also coming on the PS5. Did you play the first Last of Us?
No, I never actually did. I was too poor.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Well, I did, and I remember the gameplay, and that game was revolutionary when it came out.
I mean, this trailer that's not really a trailer is looking pretty good, man. I mean, it definitely looks like somebody's getting their head crushed in or shot with something. There's a lot of stuff going on.
And then, with this announcement, we have the new Horizon Dawn game coming out as well. Did you play that one, Nick?
No, I didn't play that one either.
Okay. We definitely got to get you playing these games, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, definitely. Yeah. You said it in front of me. I'll play it.
PS5 exclusive, just like you said, is definitely going to draw a huge crowd because there's so many fans of these games. Want to talk about Crucible?
Amazon's Crucible. I mean, come on, man. Let
me pull it up.
I don't know how many people are actually playing that game, to be honest with you.
Amazon just got into the space, if anyone doesn't know, people don't know this, but Amazon Game Studios have been releasing games for a long time.
I do think that they will eventually crush everybody, though. Don't get me wrong on that. Like, in a way, I mean, like, they have so much money. They could, like, have a gigantic game studio, right? I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
You could out-quality them, but I mean, like, they're going to hire some really great people.
Yeah. So if you guys don't know, they come out with a new game called Crucible. It's a shooter, but it's also a strategy shooter. You definitely, and the coolest thing is they've introduced a feature in it where you have to actually grind to get points and level up your character while in gameplay, which is really cool. There's a variety of characters you can choose from, and the characters are not forgetful. You actually remember them. They have distinct features, or they have distinct weapons, attack and defense styles. I played it for a couple of minutes, and it seems like it can really be the next big shooter that's coming out.
Maybe it just hasn't picked up yet, you know.
Yeah.
And then, like, people, like, you know, all of a sudden really take it to heart and then, like, really start running with it.
Definitely.
I mean, a title like that from a gigantic company, I mean, like, you really can't hold it against it if it's a good game at the end of the day, right?
The thing is, Amazon, right, the biggest company in the world, but we haven't heard a lot of buzz about Crucible. I think they're not pushing the game because they themselves do not feel that it's ready, and I believe that the developers that are working, they have this game so close to their heart, and they know what such a big platform that Amazon is. They don't feel comfortable pushing it out because, you know, their marketing budget and what they have going for it, they could blast it everywhere, but they haven't yet.
I see what you're saying. They want to have, like, a very sure footing when they enter the game market, or else, like, they could, like, literally, you know, you don't want to do that, you know, from their position. You want to come in there strong. I got you.
And anything in the game market, I mean, us gamers, I mean, you guys know this as well. If a game comes out, first impressions mean everything. A game comes out, someone doesn't like it, or if there's a feature, or if it's laggy, or if there's a bug, we will have an outrage.
People had a lot of flack about, what was it, the more recent Fallout game, right?
Yeah, that too, and the Battlefield games and all that. That's why they release betas for this, and that's why they go through these beta trials, which is great. But even in the betas, there's such a lasting impression that just amplifies throughout the gaming community if there's something.
Right. Well, I mean, if any of you guys have played Crucible, I mean, like, we would love to hear more about it. I mean, like, you know, Obby's had his experience with it, but I want to know what somebody who's, like, you know, really sat down and played it for a while thinks. I mean, maybe it's catching on and we just don't know.
Yeah, put it in the comments below, you guys. Let us know what you think about Crucible, the PS5 Reveal, and some of the new PS5 exclusives like The Last of Us and Horizon Zero Dawn 2. Really exciting news.
One last thing before we move on, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Baldur's Gate 3, okay? I know that somebody's excited about that out there. It is going to be awesome.
Today's podcast, we have two major topics that we'd like to go over. If you really want to follow along with the topics that we have laid out that we're going over now, you can definitely go to our blog zone, which can be found at fluixengineering.com/blog zone. We'll put the links in the description. But the two topics that we have going over today, I guess I'll start with the first one. We had a recent topic come out, one of our blog posts. We were talking about the virtual reality adoption rates. Companies, investors in the early space. I know it's been a long time since VR has come out, VR headsets. And we want to introduce the topic of VR space has changed recently.
I think it has.
And more specifically, it's changed because the adoption rate of the mainstream people or the market adopting this new hardware, buying it, investing themselves, and then telling others to buy it as well, right, has been growing steadily at the beginning, because when VR came out, such a new technology that really burst through, the adoption rates were really slow, staggeringly slow compared to other technologies in the gaming space. And investors, or people that back these companies and these new technologies, they were hesitant to actually invest and back these companies because they always brought out the fact that, hey, the adoption rates are too slow.
Right.
But now we've seen a change. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, for what it's worth, like, if you're, like, really, really, really into VR, like companies like Varho, that stuff is expensive. The people are there, they want it, and that's what it is. But for people that are, like, on just the more consumer level, I think I would say that slowly but surely it's catching on. I think, you know, different types of entertainment forms are more foreign to older audiences. Like, something like VR, of course, has been written about in, like, science fiction or something, like, you know, beyond a certain age group. And then, like, you know, people who are, like, you know, maybe in their 40s, it's like, you know, they think it's cool. It's something they, you know, thought would happen. But it's like actually having access to it inside your home while it's still this early on. It's not like it's completely necessary. And I think that although it's interesting, I think that as it gets better and better and better, it's going to become more and more ingrained inside of our lives. All of a sudden, you won't even be realizing that, like, you have to. You'll be putting it on and off the way that you start picking up, like, like the remote control to your TV. One day, we're just not there yet.
Thing is, it's definitely. We can agree that it's definitely going to be here in the future because VR has put its roots not in just gaming, but we can see its value in education. We can see it in simulation and training, but now in gaming specifically, in the household use of VR, we are seeing more and more parents buying VR headsets for their kids, but the buying decision is not because of their kids playing games. More likely than not, it's because it's a tool, it's an education tool for the kids. But when mom and dad goes to sleep, those kids are staying up playing Beat Saber and VR chat and going through that.
Dude, they might as well. I mean, like, if you can...
That's interesting, though.
I see the positive in it. I mean, like...
Especially for us, I mean...
When I was younger, a GameCube would not teach you anything, right? It was simply
a lot
for fun,
harder,
right? Yeah. So, I mean, like... If you can kill two birds with one stone, I mean, like, honestly, seems like a sound economic buy. And you're also getting, your kid, used to higher-end technology and other things like that. So, I mean, like, if you can get a kid who starts developing for VR, I mean, that's a plus.
Yeah.
Huge.
And if you go through the timeline of VR when it really came into the market, I would argue that VR was really an option in the market, an option being that it's less friction for people to really adopt in 2014. And then as you start progressing in the timeline, let's get closer to 2017 when you saw the VR Ready sticker on Alienware computers.
Sure.
And then you saw the stickers on NVIDIA graphics cards, and you saw it on different VR hardware. And that VR Ready sticker really showed the fact that the hardware has catched up to the point where, you could play a seamless VR experience. But still, even then, that hard push that you saw that VR Ready sticker everywhere in our industry as far as the hardware, people didn't really go into VR as well. We saw most of the enthusiasts and the early adopters go through it. And we saw the technology curve of VR. And nowadays, that VR Ready sticker, it left a sour taste in many people's mouths because the enthusiasts adopted the hardware. They saw the VR Ready sticker. They plugged in their VR games, but the games weren't really there.
Yeah, the software wasn't there yet.
The games were far to none. And I know, and I'm so glad that games like Beat Saber came out because it really brought VR into the mainstream of social media too.
Some of those titles like really stuck around. Like, how old is Beat Saber now? Anyways, like 2 years old, 3 years old.
I think a couple more than that. It's been in development for long.
Okay, well, it's a popular game now,
and even the memes, like the VR chat and all that, really brought it in our industry, and I think people are adopting it more.
Yeah, I think so.
So the question is, right, the adoption rates were a concern, but that's not the case anymore. And we have a couple of reasons why we think it's not actually an area of concern anymore. One, the hardware has catched up to the point where you can have a seamless experience, but not just the hardware in your PC, but also the hardware in your headsets.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because
yeah.
The latency was an issue. Back in 2015, 2014, when you popped in HTC Vive, I don't know if those were the first headsets that people bought, it had some latency issues. You could experience it, you could see it. You would have to drag a long cord along to the PC or your home theater's setup.
I think that's part of the big deal that's going on now is like getting rid of the cord for that thing is like huge.
Have you seen it? Like the new headsets coming by, they have an option where you can plug it in on your feet so you can track movement.
Oh, that's cool, dude.
Latency has been cut down.
Yeah.
And the processors, we talk about, the nanometer sizes going smaller, processors becoming more efficient to actually, calculate these 3D models and everything like that. But then we also need to talk about how if you have a fast enough PC to run VR, in a seamless experience, do you have the headset to match? And then do you have the room in your house or in your room to do the whole thing? And then you start thinking about all of that, and you're looking at more of a $2,000 setup, or even more sometimes.
Yeah, I'm certain that those considerations in the past have gotten in the way of a lot of people starting to do this. Now it's starting to probably be like a little bit more relatively possible.
Yeah, exactly. So that was another thing, cost, right? Cost was so high because of emerging technology. It's really more reasonable now. You could build a VR-ready PC for $700 relatively, you know what I mean? You can get a headset for closer to that $200, $300, and you could enjoy a nice experience,
Well, now it seems like it's more actually like an actual consumer space item if you're looking for, things in that price range.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: in the next year or two, do you see yourself gaming in VR as much as you would be gaming regularly in a PC?
I mean, the VR games I've seen are promising. I think that if conceptually we're able to push the boundaries of VR, we're going to see really interesting things. And I think it'll be kind of infectious. You'll have to be in there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's 2020.
Yeah.
We're talking about 2022, which sounds, just that much more futuristic. There's hardly a chance that we won't find a good reason to be in VR.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I mean, games I'm looking forward to playing as much as the games I've been playing before. When Resident Evil came out for VR, people flocked to it because it was not just a gaming experience, but it was a horror experience, and people really liked that, having the zombies chase you. Now you have games like Half-Life Alyx, which people have gravitated to, and it looks beautiful. And then, games that we know that we've been playing as well, Virtual Battlegrounds.
Oh, yeah.
More of the indie game titles. Virtual Battlegrounds, if you guys don't know what it's about, Battle Royale that's completely in VR with realistic, engagements and firefights, and you can traverse the world in complete VR, and we've been checking it out. If you go to our website, you can read more about it. But it's very interesting, going forward. And I think more of those indie titles like that, the smaller titles, will actually get me into VR more than the major breakthroughs, because those indie titles those developers are really going after the enthusiasts and what they like. They're really listening more. I
mean, I would say it's the indie developers' game right now in that space, because, frankly, the big studios, they can only do so much to get around that. You know what I mean? It takes so much to develop a VR game. It's you're kind of in an equal footing with people that are having their own studios at this point.
Yeah,
to a degree.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
Yeah.
And people, there's the fine point between realistic and, don't get me wrong, you'd love to have a realistic experience as much as you can in a VR game, but then being realistic and being a pain in the butt to play. Sometimes it can be really realistic, but it's a pain in the butt to play, especially in VR.
I think that has been part of the growing pain the entire time, right? I mean, it's been okay, as we're talking about 2014 and different things like that. It's there was so much pain in the butt type stuff going on that it's it took time to get to the point where we are now, where it's we've kind of sussed out some of those things, and we can make good sense of what actually would be appealing to somebody to actually play.
Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting topic. If you guys want to learn more, you can definitely go to our website, FLUIXengineering.com. Go to our blog zone. Here's a snippet of the blog right here, where we talk into more detail of how VR has changed and how the adoption rates have changed throughout the timeline. So check it out. But we have another interesting topic, something that you brought along. Do you want to introduce it, Nick?
Sure. All right. So something that occurred to me was that, I saw Rowdy Rogan playing Warzone with his father.
Yeah.
And it was wow, I don't think my parents would have really done that quite the same way as they would now. And then I thought, we're just talking about VR, right? And here's games on the computer and other things like that. But people will play games with their kids these days, and it's not the same as it was. I think there is a generational gap that is shrinking a little bit. I think that there's a few reasons that are leading up to why, but I mean, isn't that interesting though? That people are this is something that I think that watching a movie with your parents was one thing, but getting them to sit down and play with you, that was a dream for a lot of kids, right?
It's true, and what Nick's talking about here is we've noticed something here that we've kind of investigated and got really interested in, the generational gap in gaming. Just like Nick was talking about, in our childhood, playing games with our parents was it was far-fetched.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like, it'd be one thing if it was like my dad saw me sitting there playing like Cubert or something on the PlayStation, like, a re-release. It's like, oh, I used to play that when I was a kid, and he'd think, like, oh, that's cool or something. But it's like, is your dad gonna play like, like what's the title that you were playing when you were younger?
I would play a lot of Halo.
Your dad wouldn't play Halo with you.
I don't think so.
You just like most, but here I am saying this. We got to ask some people because some people's dads might have played Halo with them.
Yeah,
and like true. There you go, right?
Yeah, no, that's very true. And the reason we want to really discuss this topic, you guys, and we really want to gauge your experience with it as well. It's really interesting how gaming has changed in the American family over the years. Mm-hmm. One question that we asked our parents when we got interested in this topic is, we wanted to know, did our parents play video games when they were younger?
Right.
And now we want to ask you guys too. Before we talk more into the topic, you guys can go in the description down below. There'll be a poll that you can fill out some questions that we asked, just that we're asking now. Did your parents play video games? Did you play video games with your parents when you were younger? How do you think gaming has changed? And why is it now that there's so many different age groups in gaming? And we definitely love to know what you guys think.
Yeah, I would be thrilled to know what you guys think. I mean, it's an interesting subject to stumble into, but I think it's about time somebody really starts asking the community.
Yeah, definitely go down to the poll below. It's about a five question questionnaire. Please fill it out and let us know what you think. But that's another thing, right? Let me ask you this, Nick. If you were to, you'd obviously play games with your younger brother.
Oh yeah, we played too many games. Yeah,
awesome. Would you see that if you were playing games for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Maybe like 4 or 5 hours. Did your parents ever come in the room and be like, "Hey, you've been playing way too long," and they told you to get off?
My parents, they were relatively cool about it, but I mean, they wanted me to be outside. Basically, it was like they were like, "Look, like you've had your 4 or 5 hours doing that, like you need to be outside more." They would walk in and just be like, "Look, you can't be doing that all this time."
Gotcha.
Step in there and it'd be like, "Have you done your homework though?
Yeah.
Since you've been playing for a while. I'm just curious, Nick.
Yeah.
Did
you?
Yeah.
So the main things really, it was the same with my folks too. My mom, when I asked her the same question, why was it that you told me to get off? And most people would think this is common sense, but what I really wanted to know, my parents thinking, their thought process behind it. If I've been playing for 5 hours, 4 hours in a day, and I asked my mom, and my mom would come in and be like, "Hey, you've been playing too long, you have to get off." But as a kid, they'd never tell you why, right? And now as an adult, you can ask them. And my mom said it was the simplest thing, just like you said, it's childhood obesity was a real issue.
Yeah.
Childhood obesity, she just cared about my health, my eyesight. She told me, now I could ask her, that's the real reason now, you know what I mean? And just like you said, go outside more. And another thing you brought up, Nick, my grades, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I asked my mom, I was like, wait, do you think there's a difference? If I came home with all A's, would you let me game more? She said yes. When I did well in school, she definitely let me play for a lot more, you know what I mean?
Well, when it has to be, it has to be said that, perhaps there's a stigma of, what games might do to you because they hadn't really been around as long inside the home. It was like, what is the effect of these games on my child's brain? They used to, have reports like that, right? Games are violent, they're hurting kids and all this, and
huge
your kid's going to be overweight, or your kid's not going to have any social skills, or all these things, and it seems like everything's on our computers now, and everything's out there on these game consoles. If you cut a kid off from their computer or their game console, they might not even be able to talk with their friends at all. In a way, sure you can run into them in school, but that's a whole other part of their life. So I mean,
that's true.
Now things are so different that it's
it's a medium for them to interact with the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm thinking that eventually, just the same way that things are with Facebook or how they were, perhaps it'll be this is where you talk with your cousins, or you talk with your grandma or something. Eventually,
friends,
and maybe VR will be like that too one day. Maybe my grandma will put on a VR thing and we can talk and hang out and do activities together, because it's Facebook plus activities. I mean, I know that Facebook has activities, but you know what I'm saying.
We can see it's definitely a medium for people to interact, develop relationships, because it's a means of playing with one another, and humans are we're very, we want to be able to be part of a community, and this is a great way to connect with people.
I will say this though, I am curious if there is a middle ground between something that is engaging for a kid and something that is engaging for a parent. I don't mean that like in the way that it's like, oh, these games for kids or whatever, but what I mean is like, you get off work, and like I know that like everybody's like going on about Fortnite and all these different things, but I think like what I'm trying to say is like something that is mature enough but accessible to kids at the same time. Maybe these titles are like that already, and I just don't know.
It's a family activity, and that's the next thing. Just like you're saying, bringing up, games had this stigma when we were growing up. Like you said, how does it really affect my child? And I think the darkest point it got was, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a lot of school shootings, God forbid, and people noticed that these shooters, it was really dark and negative. They would reload their magazine halfway. And it's a clear indication of shooting games, because in shooting games, before you engage another enemy, you reload so you have a full magazine. And they noticed that some of these, these horrible school shootings, these shooters would do the same thing, and they would attribute it to video games. But now you're seeing a complete change in the industry, and you're seeing this now. Parents wouldn't even touch video games because they knew that's not something for me. But now we're seeing a complete change that you can see a family sit down and use gaming, just like you said, as a family activity, a way of family bonding. And the stigma has changed now because they understand that, hey, it's not video games, but the family bonding and how close the family is to where it could possibly change a child's life, whether they can go to the extreme of doing something so horrible or being able to bond with their parents.
I mean, like, it's an interesting area. Like,
what did you think about that? What did you think about how violent? Like, did your parents ever stop you from playing a violent video game?
Yeah, my father actually broke one of my King of Fighters games.
Really?
Yeah, he got so mad about it.
Yeah.
But, my father actually did like the strategy games. I remember when I was younger, he actually would play one game with me, play one with me. And it was Star Wars Clone Wars on the GameCube.
Oh, really?
Which is a strategy game. It's a good game. Mm-hmm. I liked it a lot, and I remember I would play him, and I would usually win, but then he would challenge me to chess, and he would beat me because he's like very good at chess, and that was that's what I got for that. Ha ha. Yeah. But I think there's something that needs to be said about people who played video games when they were older versus like me playing a video game when I was a kid, because my father, he actually had an Atari console when he was younger, and he also saved up like all the money he ever had to buy an actual Atari computer as well. Mm-hmm. So he played the games when he was younger. So when he saw me playing games, it was not that far fetched for him. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, just like us, or when we see our kids, and they're growing up or whatever, and it's just that like they're putting VR headsets on, it's not going to be weird for us. It's going to be like, okay, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So maybe it's not as extreme as somebody who was like literally like alive during like the Great Depression, and then color TV eventually came out and all those different things. Mm-hmm. It's just like it took all that time. Yeah, like okay, going back to the radio and then like going forward like type stuff, and then like the Atari for them is like, wait, what are you doing? You know, and then all of a sudden, like, you're looking at an SNES and you're just like, that's like scrambling my brain levels. Yeah. And then like N64, and it's just like, okay, whatever, my grandson's crazy, he's doing this. Yeah. But like for us, like when we look down and we, look at our, our kids, it's just going to be like, oh yeah, sure, put on that VR thing. I bet that's dope. I bet that's fun.
Yeah, I mean, when I asked my mom what was the first game they played, and my mom said I played Bomberman, back in the day.
That's pretty good game.
Yeah, and that was in the 70s, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I asked my mom, like, hey, if you saw me playing violent video games, were you worried? And she said yes. She was worried, but she said that, she looked at the maturity level that I kind of showed through my personality, and she was confident that I wouldn't lead to extreme behavior. I wouldn't hurt my friends and all that. But I asked her, I was like, okay, now me asking you as an adult, like, would you be worried if I played games for too long, or I played any games that you didn't like? What age do you think it would be appropriate? And she said, whatever age you show maturity, you know what I mean? And like you said, now with what we've experienced, and we play games for most of our lives, when we have kids now, in the future, definitely the way my parents raised me, I'll definitely translate that, a little bit of that. to, you know, my kids, like making sure that they're not gaming and just being overly overweight or where it affects their health or their eyesight. You know, that was a huge thing. I could play violent video games with my older brother because he was a lot older than me. But I'll definitely translate that to my kids because I don't want my kids playing something.
I mean, but at the same time, like, some of these violent video games were, like, those years of playing, like, you know, SNK games and, like, you know, King of Fighters, all that jazz, like, that was a really good influence on my younger brother. Like, that, like, he really took to heart a lot of really cool things from, like, the different games I was playing at the time. And some of them were, you know, a little bit violent. You know, my parents didn't like me playing them, but, like, you know, like, one parent would kind of give, and I'd get the game, and I'd play it, but it was like, you know, one of my other parents would be like, you know, you really shouldn't be doing that so much. You're probably on that too long, like, because then it's like, you know, I would think it's violent, but at the same time, like, they're games. Like, art replicates human life, right? So, yeah, it's hard to say with a lot of this stuff.
That's very interesting how it goes back and forth on that. Another thing I wanted to discuss with you is, you know, us going into this, and we'll be discussing this more and going into it more. We think we have a couple of reasons why the gaming generation gap has become smaller. Right. Definitely, I think gaming is, like we talked about, is more education-based now, and we would love to investigate that. We'd love to know what you guys think. Has games become more prominent in the American family because they're viewed as an education medium? And another thing that we would like to know is the access to gaming technology. Handhelds, the access of technology and how that's made the gaming generation gap smaller. Because before, you know, maybe in the 80s or the 70s, there'd probably be one room where you had a TV.
Okay. Look, I mean, honestly, like, there was a point where, like, you couldn't even listen to music, like, on the go. So, things like that changing, I guess it kind of inspired, like, you know, some of, like, you know, oh, now you can play games on the go, too. Yeah, I would say
even just how many TVs you had in your house. You know what I mean?
TVs, now that they're cheaper, I mean, like,
you couldn't play a video game if there was only one TV in the house and mom was watching a soap opera or dad was watching sports or something like that. You couldn't play a game.
You can choose what you want to watch when you want to watch it too now.
Yeah,
more easily.
But that's the thing. Like, if you had two TVs or a TV in the living room or a TV in your bedroom, you could go into your room and just play games however you want. But it's changed now because even just the number of screens or access to screens you can game on. If it's a screen, you can possibly game on it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's become way more accessible.
I even saw a meme, the smart refrigerators with the screens on them.
Yeah.
People have found a way to import Doom on those and play on your smart refrigerator.
It's probably not good for your posture.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, but it's crazy. Anything with a screen nowadays. That's definitely something we want to know what you guys think. Has the access to technology made older people playing games with younger kids rather than just get out the Monopoly board and set up all the pieces and all that? Literally turn on the TV and you're playing games.
I mean, you're going to be in front of a computer or a TV or something anyways all day, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Some people are not sitting in front of the TV all day for their job. But what I'm trying to say is, it's like, yeah, you have access to technology. Like, you're probably like one quick motion away from actually playing a game, and your kid probably is too.
Yeah, and we want to know, you know, ever since the pandemic and now it's horrible that everything's going on in the world right now, but it's also looking on the bright side. A lot of parents have time with their kids now, and I hope you guys are out there bonding over games because it's a great way to bond with your kids. I definitely loved it when my dad. The only game my dad would play, by the way, with me is simulation racing games. Like, he thought that was cool, so he would play that with me. So I definitely remember those moments.
That's interesting.
And your kids will too, so I hope you guys are playing with your kids out there. Another thing we want to investigate is, we talked about those parenting practices and how it'll change in the future and how our childhood went through it. But the perception of games over the years, you know what I mean? We kind of talked about that. It's changing now to an educational tool, and I believe that's why it's going in. VR technology and how that correlates to more. You see a lot of parents buy VR headsets to play with their kids nowadays, and it's literally, especially now when you can't go outside, it's not safe out. That's a great way to experience a roller coaster. You know, especially if you're a toddler, you might not know the difference. You know.
Well, I mean, I think in that case, like, now that I've actually thought about it, like, you know, the fact that your father's, like, you know, actually helping you to, like, you know, experience that ride, it's like that probably adds like so much magic to it that like, you know
that kid's gonna remember that.
Yeah, that kid will never forget that. It was like, was that real or not?
Well, Nick and I will be investigating this topic coming forward. To summarize what's going on in this space, we noticed that a lot of parents are playing with their kids, and we believe that the access to technology, games being a medium for education, and also the perception of games changing over the years has really made it easier for different age groups to get into gaming. And we want to investigate this, and the way we were thinking of investigating is putting out a poll. So please check the link in the description, fill out our poll, help us get some data, and we'll see if there's a correlation. Let's see if you guys agree. Let us know your thoughts on the reason you think gaming has become more accessible in our society today, especially in our family unit. But it's been great having you guys.
Yeah, I agree. It's been awesome, and it's going to be cool to see you guys next time as well.
So you can follow us at FLUIXengineering.com. That's FLUIX Engineering. But thank you for coming to the State of the Game.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Take care.